Hello.
Hello. Wow,
Welcome.
the synchronization.
I know, right? Even over voice call. Well, welcome to week 6. Last week I said week 4, but I was mistaken. Last week was week 5. This week is week 6. Which is absolutely insane. That means we've been 6 weeks into quarantine. How are
Oh
you
no.
feeling?
More than that, we didn't start doing this immediately. Oh my gosh. I'm doing great. I've been doing 100 squats a day for like since quarantine started, so we're
Damn.
getting there. I'm not flat as a board anymore.
It's so easy for you to like bend down and pick things up now. It's like no sweat.
No sweat, absolutely, yeah.
I'm
Um,
I'm glad
but
to hear that.
besides that, I've been watching a lot of TV. And recently we talked about Avatar: The Last Airbender for our last week's show, and this week we're doing Legend of Korra. So I decided to do a little rewatch, and yesterday I just blasted through the entire first season.
Oh
So
yes. I mean,
yeah,
the each season is a lot shorter than Avatars, so
yeah,
it's
definitely.
easy
It's
to
like what, like 12 episodes?
yeah,
Easy.
easy to binge. Definitely
Definitely.
whenever I'm like sick, I rewatch season 1 of Legend of Korra. That's like in the lineup of, in bed sick.
It's very good. It has a lot of really fun moments, and you get like a lot of this new style of animation because they kind of incorporate the 3D into it,
Mhm.
and it's nice to look at, and it's nice to feel the emotions.
100%. Um, well, all right. So going straight into it then. What is since I watch it almost every night. I had a little bit of a break from it, but recently I've got it back into watching it every night. So it's fresh in my mind, season 1 at least.
Mhm.
What is your impression of this world? We talked about Avatar, but kind of going into the development going into Legend of Korra, because it's different than Avatar.
Yes, this definitely goes into the very industrialized age. You're
Mhm.
getting into some of the stuff like it's a time of technological advancement. You have biplanes being invented like within the first season by Asami's dad.
Mhm.
Um, you have like electricity, random stuff like that. Like movies are being developed by Varric in season two. So you're very much like kind of like 30s
Yeah.
development wise, but with the aesthetic, it is a little more steampunk, which I
I
love.
love
I love
steampunk.
steampunk. It's so fun. Um, but I really like the idea of this world recovering from this century-long war,
Mhm.
and people coming together, and making the United Republic, um, and not necessarily breaking up all the kingdoms based on bending anymore.
Mhm.
What do you think about this brave new world?
Well, yeah, I agree. The steampunk vibe, it inspires me every time I watch it. I want to write a one shot that has steampunk elements in it. Um,
Yes,
it's in the back of my head like a thing to do.
it
You
would be
definitely
so fun to do Legend of Korra one shot.
oh,
Just because,
with bending.
oh my gosh. Yes, with bending, but also with like the lightning gloves, like Amon's cronies,
Yes.
that would be so
I
fun.
think my friend actually sent me somebody did write up Avatar World D&D sort of handbook,
Oh,
and it
you've
was
gotta
pretty
send
cool.
me that. Oh,
I
I was
have to
thinking
go
about the
dig it
logistics
up.
last night.
Yeah, and you see this much more progressive world. It seems as though the original Avatar gangs built this city that is super like revolutionary.
Hmm.
And they're like founders, and some of them have built up a bit of an ego, and they built statues of themselves
Yeah, LMAO.
throughout the city. Um, they're fun little Easter eggs. Like in season one, they're by a statue of Zuko with flames coming from his hands. Um, nice little nod to that.
Yeah.
Another development, metal bending. We again didn't get into
Yes.
like Toph's character development. Talking about the original Avatar, but she plays a big role in the effects that she had going into Korra with her police force.
Hmm.
Absolutely amazing. Um, yeah, so overall, just I really love this world. And the music as well. You have more jazzy um,
Yes. I
soundtrack.
love it. Swing feel.
Yes, they have like screaming jazz at certain points, and
Yeah.
it's really nice.
It's super fun.
It is super fun. Like they're going around the racetrack and the saxophone is doing the screaming uh skill.
I particularly like, okay, you were talking about metal bending. I like how Legend of Korra takes like these small, maybe tangential concepts from Avatar: The Last Airbender and brings them to the forefront, like metal bending being like, okay, only Toph can do it, like she's super special for it, and it's like, okay, well her daughter learned how to do it and now like it's a widespread thing. It's
Mhm.
a specialized type of skill.
Right.
And then you've got chi blocking, which is like really something that we only ever saw Ty Lee do, and it becomes the method through which Amon and his cronies like
Yeah.
essentially like level the playing field between benders and non-benders, which I think is just like a very cool idea. Like you see so much chi blocking in the first season. It's just so cool to me because like I love that in the first place.
Mhm.
Because I love Ty Lee. She's iconic.
Iconic.
Um,
Non-bending representation, you know.
yeah, absolutely. And then bloodbending as well, like being like, oh yeah, there are weirdos who can do it like without the full moon, and I'm like, oh no, that's super scary because like bloodbending is one of the scariest things in the show. Like,
Yeah, you just control somebody's body, and I think Korra really put that into perspective.
mhm.
Like
There's a lot
really.
of moments in this first season that are like horrifying because
Oh yeah.
Amon is such a scary character.
Dude, I
Like,
when I was young and I was watching this for the first time, I Amon was the like number one villain in my head, 'cause
yeah,
he actually had, honestly, if I lived in that bending world, I would be, if I was a bender, one, I would be terrified of Amon. Two,
mhm,
if I wasn't a bender, I probably maybe feel the same way as Amon, and that kind of scares me, you know?
yeah,
100%, if you had a world depending on people who had some advantageous power, you bet they would be on top. And if I wasn't a bender, I'd be pretty mad, you know?
yeah.
So it was really realistic, and in ways, going out through the seasons, Legend of Korra's world is a lot darker than Avatar: The Last
Oh,
Airbender.
definitely.
There's some
I
brutal
mean,
deaths.
in Avatar, you're like, okay, we have imperialism, but it's
Uh-huh.
like in Korra, you have like so many like radical political movements. I think someone did an analysis where they broke down each season based on which political movement that the villains like
Mhm.
reflected, and it's just so cool to me.
Interesting.
Yeah, season one being like radical communism, like radical like
Ooh.
equality.
Mhm.
Season two being religiously based
Uh-huh.
government, like um, season three being radical anarchy, and season four being I think like radical militarism.
Yes.
Um,
That sounds about right.
yeah,
Um, yeah, absolutely really dark. There's some brutal, they take bending to a brutal side as well. Um,
definitely.
there's there's in season 3 when the main villain, I think his name's like
So here,
Zahir. Um,
mhm,
he essentially uses air bending to suck out the air from the Empress, and
Yes.
that was, oh my gosh,
Horrifying.
horrifying. Um, and then in that same season, you have Lin Beifong's sister. I forgot her name. There's Zahir's girlfriend who has the similar power of Combustion Man from
Mhm.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, and she wraps a piece of metal around her head right as she inhales. So
Yeah. So she explodes herself.
I was like,
That's
"Oh my
bonkers.
god."
Yeah, this one's scary.
Um,
Also, the scene in the season 3 finale when they're they put the poison into her with water bending, and I'm like, oh, that makes my skin crawl.
No, season 3, man. Season 3 was
Season
absolutely.
3 is hardcore.
It really is because that's also the main episode where season that Korra starts suffering from depression, and by the end of it, she's like, I think at the end of season 3, she's in the wheelchair, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then she starts like having PTSD, and I'm like,
yeah.
uh,
Season 3 absolutely tore Korra apart. Like
yeah,
my 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 friend,
my heart aches
my
for
heart
Korra at
aches.
the end of season 3.
Um, but going into it, Korra, I actually don't like as an avatar, but by the end of season 2, I really dislike Korra. I only
Yeah,
start liking. I like Korra in the beginning of season 1, and then I like Korra by the end of the series when she
yeah,
like rediscovers herself. Otherwise, I think she's a really selfish avatar through the main middle chunk of it. Um,
yeah. Definitely, she goes through a lot of periods of like trial and error and mostly error.
yeah. I mean, just some things that she does just kind of irks me. Kind of like she does an airbending race with Tenzin's kids, and she uses the Avatar state to beat them in the in the
Yeah,
airbending race. It's like, oh come on, Korra. You use the wisdom of all the past avatars to beat some uh, 8-year-olds in a little
yeah.
airbending race. That really that kind of frustrates me. Um, But also, a major part of this world, I believe, is the incorporation of the spirit world because season 2, Korra um, essentially combines both worlds, which causes some of the conflict and
Yeah.
reappearance of airbending in season 3. Um, a controversial choice. I'm kind of curious as to what your opinion is on her combining these two worlds.
I don't really necessarily remember the circumstances that led up to it in season 2. Season 2 is definitely like my least rewatched
Yes,
season because it is,
it's
I
the
think,
worst.
generally agreed upon to be like the worst
It is.
season.
Yes.
It has a lot of like good parts. Like I really love the stuff about Avatar 1. One, right?
Yes.
Okay. Um, I love everything about Varric. God, Varric's character arc through the whole series, it makes me so happy. He's such a weirdo.
Yeah, he's one of those like brilliant, crazy mastermind brains,
Yeah, he's iconic.
iconic.
But for the most part, season 2 just is not my jam.
Mhm.
I don't love it. Just having to see Korra be manipulated yet again, um, for an entire season, I'm like, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. Um, I think season 3 is definitely like my favorite.
Season 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Season 1 is my favorite. But
season 1 is so good. It is such a good like introduction to the world, and you get all these really like cool characters introduced, like especially like, oh, you get to see meet General Ira, which
Yeah.
They did say yes, Dante Basco will voice him. Here you go,
My
guys.
heart.
And he will be a hunk. And I said, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
um, God, I forgot what I was gonna say, but so please continue. Um,
Oh no, I don't have anything else. I'm just freaking out
oh, that's
over
right, that's right.
hot boys in the show.
Season one. So Legend of Korra, when they like commissioned the show, they were only gonna do season one. So that's why it like was made in its way.
Yeah. I
But
mean, you can definitely tell that from the finale. Like the
yeah,
finale has an air of like ending to it.
yeah,
Like
a final hurrah, salute, goodbye sort of feeling.
exactly. Like she gets her bending back, connects with her spiritual side. Um,
Gets with Mako.
gets with Mako. It's very much like a oh like cool, we're done.
Yeah.
Like it's good now. It's all good now. And I'm like, okay, like that makes it's the first season is a very good like self-contained story.
Mhm.
You could watch the first season and not watch any of the others and you might be happy. Like
Yes.
that's cool. I mean, I personally I personally like the
Asami.
rest of the story arc,
Yes.
but watching season 1, it makes me think like, oh, like this yeah, hearing you say that makes absolute sense. Like
Mhm.
it does just fit very well.
Yeah, you get this sort of awkward like startup from season two, which I don't know, probably maybe could have set it up for inevitable failure. Um,
Yeah.
but it was really awkward in season two. You had this weird like the set of villains. I forgot his name, but his like two twin
It's
daughters. Uh,
Unalaq and
Unalaq.
Eska and Desna.
Yes, thank you. Eska and Desna had this like weird sort of cringy element to them.
Yeah.
Um, but we get introduced to Varric in season two, which
Mhm.
again I think he has some good highlights in season two. Um,
Yeah.
but let's go into so we've talked about the world a whole lot, and we've kind of stretched into our other questions already. But let's
Yeah.
go into favorite parts. What are your some of your favorite parts of Legend of Korra?
I there's so many really, really good moments.
Mhm.
But for me, I really love when you get to see the characters be really clever, like
Yeah.
and the really heavy emotional moments too. I mean, like I really like to see the part in the first season where Korra is like in this metal box. She's been captured by Unalaq or not Unalaq, Tonrak,
Mhm.
um or Tarlock. Oh my
Tarlock.
god. And Amon comes in, is like wrecks Tarlock shit and is like, okay, like electrocute the box, like don't underestimate her, like
Mhm.
and she hangs on to like the ceiling of the box with like a strap of cloth and like pretends to be knocked out and then breaks out and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so iconic.
Girl,
Um,
the strength she had holding herself up,
yes. I
queen.
mean, she's beefed. Cora's
She is
beefed. I want to
beef.
look like Cora. I mean, honestly, like, oh, like I wish. That's my gym goals is to
Yes.
have Cora's big muscles. I'm nearly there.
Nearly there.
Nearly
You
there.
got like the thighs and butt side down,
Yeah, the thighs are
probably.
both side down. I've got pretty good shoulders too, but we'll stop talking about my physique. Um, but I really love the moments of just like super super deep like emotion, especially like even like I don't have many references for Asami and Korra necessarily because I haven't seen the later seasons in a long time, but I do remember certain scenes of like Asami bringing Korra like tea and like
Mhm.
just being like, "Are you okay?" and like the comfort
Yeah, and I
is
think
just
those comforting scenes. Okay, well, there's a major criticism where people are like, Korra and Asami don't make any sense because it just seemed so sudden. They didn't have anything. But if you look at those scenes that you mentioned, those deep, thought out scenes, and Asami was a guy and she was doing that, you would
Yeah,
you would automatically think, oh, there's something going on. You know,
exactly.
just a quick aside to that to that matter.
Quick aside.
Quick aside.
I mean, absolutely, definitely, absolutely, definitely. I mean, if you look at all of that and like with the knowledge of what happens, you're like, oh yes, this absolutely makes sense. Like,
Yes.
it does seem sudden at the end, but that's because a lot of things in at the end of season four are kind of weird. They do fight with like giant robots, and
Yeah.
I do like that. Don't get me wrong, but it is a little like Saturday morning cartoony for me.
Yes, I
Um,
think seasons 2 to 4 um kind of feel like they were forced with the precedent of season 1 where they have a villain um for each season as opposed to Avatar: The Last Airbender where you had a major villain but these little
mhm,
smaller sub-villains that kind of play a
yes.
part. With Legend of Korra, it kind of felt exhausting binge watching through all these seasons because it's like, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world
Yeah.
again. It's
He
the end of
never
the
gets a
world.
break.
Yeah. And the thing is, at that point, it doesn't seem realistic. And I mean, this is a cartoon, but still,
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to identify with. Um,
Yes. And I know at some point Cora does have like a breakdown. She's like why like how am I ever going to be able to save the world if I have to keep saving it over and over and over? And
mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah,
She's like evil never like goes away. It just like pops back up and I'm like, "Okay, like you get it. You're
yeah.
self-reflective."
At that point, you start like feeling bad for Corey,
Yeah.
like dang,
Which
this is
isn't
a lot.
necessarily a feeling you want to have for your protagonist. You want to be like cheering them on,
Right.
constantly like pitying them.
But I totally agree with the whole there's some really deep emotional moments like since season 1 is fresh on both of our minds at the end where Amon takes Korra's bending away and oh man, I just got goosebumps from saying that. That's just like so crazy to me. And you as a viewer, you're like, oh my god, the Avatar just lost all of her bending. And the emotional moment where Mako picks her up and he's like just desperately like running away, just trying to survive as like Amon is chasing them like
Yeah,
behind them in this hallway. I think that's like a moment ingrained in my head and totally a super emotional moment.
yeah. And then directly after you get hit with another like double whammy
Yeah.
because Amon is about to take Mako's bending away and Korra like is like no like no and she breaks the like the the mental block that she had before being able to airbend and she airbends for the first time and you're like
Mhm.
uh, what?
Yes, like your mind. That's like a get up from my seat kind of moment, and like go,
Yeah.
let's go, and then you're like
Yes.
you're screaming. I think season 1 is so good because of that moment. It just season 1 is so good. I'm like tearing up just thinking about it.
And I don't necessarily know if I like Korra and Mako as a couple, but the
Mhm.
fact that they care about each other so much makes my heart like just like
Yeah. Um,
um
I had a huge crush on Mako when I was younger.
oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, no. They were like he's aloof and hot and I'm like,
Yes.
"All right. All right."
100%. Um, and then as a kid, I shipped Mako and Korra. But
Definitely.
growing up, actually when I was younger, I hated Asami. I thought Asami was like this prissy girl that just was like trying to steal some attention and whatnot. And I was a naive kid. Growing up,
Yeah.
I like Asami a lot, and I dislike Mako more. Um,
Absolutely.
I love that for myself. I love that journey that I experience,
It's called
realizing,
growth.
yes, but there's a moment in season one where Mako tells Korra, "You're the most selfless person I know," and I'm like, bitch. Listen, Asami betrayed her own father to join this cause,
Yeah.
and you're calling
Yeah.
Korra the most selfless person here. Not to undermine Korra or anything, but I think
No.
Mako was a little bit silly, and so I have a greater appreciation for Asami with my older age.
Definitely. And I mean, Asami in season one is very, very hateable because they do make her like, oh, she's just like she is like a prissy girl, like that's what Korra thinks of her, and that's what you should think of her.
Mhm.
But then they kind of start introducing like different things, like, oh, like she likes racing, she's very capable at martial arts. And
Yes.
you're like, oh, like maybe she's actually cool. And still, she's kind of like a flat character until you get up to the point where she betrays her father,
Mhm.
and then you're like, oh shit,
Yes.
Asami rules.
Yes.
Like that was very much a turning point for my opinion of her. Like even rewatching, I was like, oh wow, they really did make Asami boring. And then that happens, and I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah, you
what
get
a
a little
kill.
bit. Yeah, you get a bit of a development from her, you know? And another reason why season one's so good, because I feel like all the characters have this quick, like, but valid character development throughout the season.
Definitely.
I wanted to note my a particular favorite part of Legend of Korra that I'm upset that they didn't continue into the other seasons, which were the bending matches. I
Ah,
love
yes.
the bending matches. My
Pro
dream
bending
job,
is so fun.
yes, my dream job is to be a pro bender. Um, I think it was so cool, and I was like in my head, I would 100%, if I was in this world living in this city, I'd be going to these like bending matches. Just cheering the teams on if I was not bending it in one of the matches.
Yeah. I mean, it's very cool the progression of, and this goes back to the world building stuff, like bending as like an extension of spirituality and martial arts, and then introducing kind of like this, like, oh, like they do it for sport, and they
Mhm.
introduce kind of like a difference in like the forms that you use,
Yeah.
especially when Bolin is like um giving Korra advice on like her stance, and he's like, no, like you're like she's doing essentially like a horse stance for earthbending, which
Mhm.
is what you're supposed to do. It keeps you very stable, but he's like, you're like a sitting turtle duck, like you have to be light on your feet. And
Mhm.
that's not like traditional at all. And I love the introduction of like the non-traditional like boxing style.
Mhm.
Like, oh, it's just so nice to look at, and it's such a cool progression from like the very traditional stuff that we get to see in
Yeah.
Avatar: The Last Air.
Yeah, and you have Tenzin being mad about this because, he's a very
Mhm.
traditional guy, and he's like, no, you can't do that because that's like a mockery of tradition. And Korra's
Yeah,
like, no, I need to like ride this wave and become
times.
more modern. Yeah. And again, another little sub conflict that is so cool and realistic that it
Mhm.
blows my mind.
Definitely. I love pro bending.
I love
Um,
pro bending. It's so
I
cool.
don't know if we talked about this last time, but what kind of vendor would you be?
um, I feel like I wish I would be a firebender. I'm a person that wish I could be a firebender, but I think honestly I would be an airbender. Um,
Those both make sense.
yes. What
Um,
about you? I think I remember you saying you wanted to be an earthbender.
yes, I would very much, I think, thrive as an earthbender.
Would
I
you
would
metal
probably,
bend
um,
or magma bend?
I would probably try to metal bend and not be able to do it. I would want to magma bend so hard. I would work so hard at it. Um,
Yeah.
I would really want to study sand bending though. That was one of the coolest things
Oh
in
yeah.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is sand bending. I'm like, oh my God. It's just very cool.
Yeah, and a cool note, really quick, nice detail where Toph says she doesn't like the desert because she's
mhm,
blind and she's like everything's like fuzzy uh, while she's in
yeah,
the desert, which I think is a cool little um,
yes. Ugh, such a
detail.
cool detail.
Yes.
Um,
Quick
and
aside.
how like she can't properly like bend sand because like she doesn't know like the techniques.
Or
And
where
that's just
anything is because everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I would really love to earthbend. I would probably end up being born as a waterbender though.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just my opinion. I would probably be a waterbender who wanted to be an earthbender.
I like how we're both like, yeah, I'd probably be this bender that that wanted to be this one.
I mean like personality wise, like waterbender, like
Sure,
that's just how it is. I'm a cancer.
I could see
It's
both.
fine.
Yeah.
Um yeah, but I think I would still thrive as a waterbender. I would learn the healing arts.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, waterbending has a healing aspect to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Another favorite part, speaking of earthbending, is the role that Toph plays in Legend of Korra. She kind of is
Yeah.
the pick me up sort of when Korra's at her lowest and she's like trying to find herself and get better. She runs into Toph and then Toph is like, "Oh yeah, the
Tough
poison."
love.
Yeah, tough love. She tells her that the poison is still in her body, which is one
Mhm.
factor as to why Korra is incapable of doing some things. And also, Korra's at the same time suffering PTSD, which I'm sure the poison still remaining in her body doesn't help with trying to overcome
Yeah.
that. Um, and yeah, Toph gives her tough love, um,
Tough
tough love, and she's like, "Listen, you're gonna get this out of your body yourself." And then you, as an audience member, you're like, "What?" And Cora's like,
Of course, like
"What?"
what?
um, and Toph, like, everyone's terrified of Toph because when she comes into interaction with like Kuvira and their gang, she just wrecks the place. And it seems as though she's just like a hermit and she's honestly the most powerful bender in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so crazy. Which
Especially with Korra being like a not fully realized avatar at that point. Like
mhm.
Toph just is just so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we do get to see her um in Legend of Korra. I feel like old lady Toph is
Yeah.
so oh my god, it's just so nice to see. It's just so nice to see.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. It just fills my heart with song.
And the fact that she's like out in the woods. She's like built this whole organization,
Yes,
everything, and she's like retired and she's like, I'm gonna go
in the swamp.
in the
Like
swamp, just chill.
I love that for her.
Which is honestly a flashback to Avatar The Last Airbender where Aang first sees Toph as like a vision in the swamp.
Oh, you're right. I completely forgot about
I
that.
just
Oh my
realized
God.
that. So there's some sort of connection between Toph and the swamp, which blows my mind. Um,
Yeah.
Again, realizing how great this show is with every moment that I talk about this show. But good things aside, there are plenty of bad things in Legend of Korra.
Yeah.
Let's go
Um,
into that. We couldn't find really much that we disliked in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I feel like
yes.
that is not the case in Legend
No.
of Korra.
Don't get me wrong. I love this show. I love it
Yes.
to death. Um, but some of the things in Legend of Korra just irk me.
Mhm. There's
Um,
plenty of things.
the
Um,
major difference that stands out to me from Avatar: The Last Airbender to Legend of Korra is that Avatar doesn't really feel like Saturday morning cartoony to me.
yeah.
Korra definitely does more like it feels a little, even though it is more complex, it feels a little simpler in terms of plot and characterization. Everyone does go through like complex character arcs, but I feel like there's a lot that you have to read between the lines in order to get the full breadth of that. Where in Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's very much like people show through their actions what their motivations are and who they are, and not just really like,
Yeah, and each episode had its own like mini story to it, so you could
yeah,
sit down and understand everything that's happening and the lesson that you get from it in whatever order that you watch the Avatar: Last Airbender,
yeah,
excluding some very unique story episodes.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but with Legend of Korra, yeah, you're like in this. You have to have this previously on Legend of Korra. You know, you kind of have to have that aspect going into watching any episode of Legend of Korra.
Um, but besides that, we already talked about season two and how it's just kind of it's a
Oh
little
man,
silly. Um,
it's so bad. It's when they also introduced this new lore about Avatar One and everything, which was kind of creepy in my opinion. Is it weird to say that it gave me an existential crisis watching um the
how so?
new I am not quite sure. It's so weird to me, that whole lore that they added in there. I feel like that wasn't really necessary. Um
Yeah, I completely understand that. I do like the stuff about lion turtles just because I love the idea of like giant turtles that just have
mhm.
islands on their backs and just are like these super powerful ancient beings. I just love that.
I just love that. What are the odds that the lion turtle that Aang met in Avatar: Last Airbender was a lion turtle that existed during Avatar One's time?
I don't know. I don't
Right?
know. I mean, it's probably super ancient. I have no idea.
Because we understand the fact that turtles like live really long, um, and lion turtles I'm pretty sure live really 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 long.
Really, really long.
Not quite sure how long, but apparently avatars typically live really long as well, because
Yeah.
like Avatar Kyoshi
Next to the
lived till
spirit
like
world.
yeah, she like lived till 190 or something. So
Yeah. Which is bonkers.
I know, right? But unfortunately Aang only lived to like age 55 or something like that. Technically
Yeah.
155, but
Technically.
technically, um, yeah. I guess I'll take my turn in saying something that I don't like about Legend of Korra. Um,
Go for it.
mentioned about Korra being selfish. In the middle part. Um, Korra's and Mako's relationship in season two was a train wreck.
Yeah. Even from the first episode, it's just kind of boring
and silly. Yeah, it was
and
kind of
silly.
like Corey quickly snaps at Mako and he's like, "Oh, you're taking their side?" And then Mako's like, and then Corey's like, "Well, we're done." And then there was like this weird mix up where Asami was going after Mako again, and then Korra had amnesia. I forgot about that.
Oh
And
yeah, oh
and
my God.
and she comes back and she comes up to Mako and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so great to see you again." But Mako is kind of with Asami again.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I feel like that was so cringy. It was like a telenovela at that moment, and I was
Yeah.
like,
There's a lot of back and forth of Mako going between Asami and Korra, and I'm like, you can just quit it.
yes.
Just stop it.
I do like Mako's character development by the end of it, though. Kind of him going into law enforcement. I think his character
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
grew.
it's for him. Definitely, yeah. Starting out as like a street rat doing
Illegal
accounting
stuff.
for gangs,
Yeah.
yeah. And like living on the streets, and like grifting maybe, to like someone who is very much like lawful good kind
Mhm.
of guy, which is just it's a fun character arc.
Meanwhile, I didn't like Bolin's character arc because I feel like he went from being a really good and sweet person to being a very, I don't know, selfish, cringy comic relief sort of character.
Yeah, especially in season two, where it's like they've got the whole arc about him being in the movies for
Mhm.
Varric, and I'm just like, I like every time something like that happens, I'm like, I don't care about it. Asami in season two as well is just very, very flat to me. Like her just, she really, really wants to get Future Industries back on the map, but that's like her only motivation, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't.
Yeah. But by the end of it, all the characters seem to like pick it up. I still don't remember Bolin really redeeming himself from that sort
Yeah,
of attitude.
I love him because he's a soft boy, and I can forgive him.
I can forgive him. Yeah, sure. I still I'm not really on the Bolin train. I really like Bolin season 1. I think Bolin
Definitely.
was like a
That's the
sweetheart.
Bolin that I have in my head right now,
Yeah.
so
Just a warm, fuzzy sweetheart that is there for you. And let's see. Oh, they another thing about Legend of Korra that really just twisted things was they made the Avatar gang assholes as adults.
oh yeah,
Because
that was
apparently,
fun.
yeah, Aang and Katara apparently, I think particularly Aang, they put Aang in a bad light with how he treated his kids. Because they were like, oh, he made Tenzin the prize child. And there's some dark moments where Tenzin is with his siblings, Boomy and oh, what's her
Kaya.
name? Kaya, and he's like, "Oh, don't you remember when Father Aang did all these great stuff with us?" And they're like, "No, cuz he only did it with you." And you're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh shit, that is so depressing." Um the
It's definitely hard to see your favorite characters as adults and parents, and it's so so easy to mess up. Um
mhm.
like for me it makes sense that you would give Tenzin more attention because he is an airbender
Mhm.
and Aang was committed to like not redeeming, like recovering the practice of airbending and putting it back into the world because he felt that that was a positive thing. But like, I don't really believe that he would ignore his other kids, and that may just be
Yeah,
me being idealistic about it. But
I agree.
yeah,
Um it honestly really upset me. There's in season 1 my tribe where Korra has the flashback to get the clues on bloodbending. Um, Aang, you see like the old Avatar gang doing some like mini adventures and such pertaining to this task, and Aang seems to be like this like stick in the mud. He's not
yeah.
that goofy anymore. And
He's like,
there,
we're not kids. You don't have to call me like nicknames anymore. And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, where Toph calls him Twinkle Toes. I was just about to say
yeah,
that, and it's like, oh, come on.
come on,
Come
like,
on. Alright, and then there's the whole Toph's kids. Toph wasn't a great mom either. She was very
oh no. But
mm,
that makes sense for her character.
yeah, because she had the whole reasoning where they went into this in the show as well. They were like her parents were very controlling of her, so she was like, "Oh, so I'm going to do the opposite with my kids." But then her kids were like, "No, please."
Please, we
Pay
want attention.
please, I want a little bit of attention. And Toph was like, "Eh." And then another thing, they didn't know who their dad was, which
Their dads, because I think they have different
yeah,
fathers.
yeah. Two dads.
two dads.
You're
Um,
like, damn, tough.
and I mean, I think they say something about like she only wanted kids because she wanted to pass on her abilities,
Mhm.
which makes sense. Um, like she is very confident. She believes that she is the best earthbender to have ever lived, and she's like, yeah, I can't let that go to waste.
Mhm.
Which that all completely makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Whenever they talk about Toph, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Her
It,
going to live in the swamp, that
yeah.
makes sense.
But it's definitely a darker side to things though, which adds the whole darker element to Legend of Korra, and you're like, whoa. I mean, that makes sense, but um, but let's go into iconic characters. Like who was like your favorite character or characters in Legend of Korra?
This is a little difficult. I mean, as far as iconic villains go,
Mhm.
Amon and Zahir are really iconic villains. I mean, the Red Lotus just as a whole, like, what an iconic team. Like, I can't help but be like, oh, like, go you guys. Like, y'all are all so cool.
They have those like
Um,
the heist movie sort of ragtag
yes.
group element to them,
Yeah.
you know?
Very much like we are a team. We like know exactly how each other works. We're all so in sync. And I'm just like, oh, you guys are so cool.
And they all have their own like weird set of talents. Like
Yes.
the one girl who doesn't have arms, so she waterbends arms.
Which is
Uh,
just, I mean, they're all just such cool character
yeah,
concepts. It makes me feel bonkers.
yeah. There was a lot of thought put into that team.
Definitely.
Can I
Um,
also note that Zahir's girlfriend was taller than him, and
I was literally just thinking about that. We have the same brain.
it makes me
It's
go
like
feral.
Zahir is a short king, and that's it. Man.
Like the scene in my head where they're like on the cliffside and they're like saying like lovey-dovey things to each other and he's shorter than her and I'm thinking like, oh my god, iconic
Yeah. She's so
representation.
tall. She's
Yes,
so tall. With that braid, I mean, she's so,
she's really
I
cool
can't handle
looking.
it.
I can't handle it. The relationship,
Um,
yeah.
but Varric is iconic, obviously.
Mhm.
Mako gets Mako is iconic in the first season, but
Yes.
past that, not
Cringy.
really.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Kuvira is iconic as well. Like, I can't. The villains in this series are very well done,
Mhm.
even though what we already talked about, that kind of like the episodic nature of the seasons,
Mhm.
gets on my nerves sometimes. I really do like the different motivations for the villains, except for probably Unalaq. I really don't care about him.
Yeah.
It's like his motivation makes sense to me, but it's just boring.
Yes.
Um, but the rest of them, I'm like, y'all are all just so cool.
Yeah, they all had their own like human reasons towards like their motivations of why they want to become powerful in the world. Meanwhile, Unalaq was just kind of like, I want power. I'm big baby,
Yeah,
sort of.
I'm big baby. I want power.
I'm big baby. I want power. Um, I agree with all those. I'd say I have Asami number one on my list. I really
Yeah.
growing up, I have a crush on Asami now. Honestly, fully realized. By the end of it, I just really enjoy her character. She's a very
Definitely.
strong, technologically inclined woman. Um, we
Who
love
is
that.
still very feminine, like
Yes.
because a lot of times, like if you want to be smart, like in TV, like you have to sacrifice femininity.
Mhm.
Um, which it's like, and not to say that like everyone who is smart has to be feminine or like, but just it's fun to see. the mixing of those things,
Yes.
being able to be smart and strong,
Mhm.
um, while also like just like she likes having things. Like
Yes.
she's materialistic and she is beautiful and like
It puts on the
she's
lipstick, you
caring.
know?
She also, yeah, exactly. But she also like, not to say that everyone needs to do that, because I know that there is the idea of like, oh, like weaponized femininity, like you have to be feminine. Um,
Yes.
but I like that she is able to choose to do that,
Mhm.
and choose to be like cool at the same time. On the other hand, I do love Korra and her being butch as hell.
And it makes them an iconic pair.
Yes, absolutely.
By the end of it. My second favorite character is Lin Beifong. I
Ah,
absolutely love
yes.
this woman. She is strong. She has an attitude, and she butts heads with Korra, and I love that attitude coming from her. Um,
Mhm.
Going into like the favorite storylines and arcs, my favorite thing with Lin Beifong is when they go into Toph's metal bending city, kind of low key.
Mhm.
Gets wrapped around in a metal ball, the most safe city in the world, apparently. But her whole storyline, in season 3, I really enjoyed where she's like overstressing herself and she has this like conflict with her sister because her sister was very flighty, uh, prone to do like
Rebellious
yeah
as a child.
rebellious. There we go. Um, hanging out with the wrong people, while Lynn was the
Straight laced.
straight laced. Yeah, she's like I want to be like my mom. I want to be commander of the force, and so I'm lawful good. And she goes through this like whole mental trouble, especially with her sister because she had that moment where she had to essentially arrest her sister, and then that's where she gets the three like lines on her face because
Hmm.
her sister like accidentally cut her, and she has this struggle with Toph because I'm pretty sure Toph's favorite daughter was the younger sister, and it wasn't Lynn, and so Lynn was always like, why? I don't understand, you know?
Hmm.
I th-
I everything about Lynn's character, like even in the first season, like um, her police force, like the people on her police force get abducted by Amon, and she quits the police force so she can go around the
Mhm.
law in order to break them out. And I'm like,
Yes.
especially for a lawful good character, like that's such a big thing. Like
Yes.
being like, I'm not wearing the badge anymore. I'm a loose cannon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's just so cool.
Man,
Um,
she's out there. Who's she fighting? And you're
and
like
even the
cheering her
first
on.
episode, she doesn't care that Korra is the Avatar. Like she
Mhm.
cares about her beyond that, and she she treats her like a normal person. In the first episode, like Korra's like, I don't think you know who I am, and she's like, oh, I know
Oh.
you're the Avatar, but you still busted up my city, and that's not cool. Um, she's like, I will not give you special treatment, and Korra's like,
Oh,
what?
what? Yeah, she kind of makes Korra, realize a few things. And then there's Lynn's past relationship with Tenzin. Um,
Yes.
Also a nice little detail and an added minor drama into it, which
Yeah.
by the end of season 1 she protects their entire family. I remember that, and she gets her bending taken away. Another super dramatic moment that makes my heart
Yeah.
like
Oh.
ache. Oh yeah, because they were flying on the Bison and they were being chased after, and so she goes over and she tears down like two Zeppelins. You remember
Yeah,
that?
just like ooh, like wrenches them open, and I'm like, oh gosh, you're just so iconic, so iconic.
Iconic. God, I'm so glad I remembered that. Dude, she took down two Zeppelins by herself before
She
being
just
taken
wrenches
down.
the skin off the Zeppelins. That's ridiculous.
Oh my lord. All right.
But my favorite part about her is that like they show her being like vulnerable too. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times they'll show her after something bad happens, just like laying in bed, and I'm like, oh man,
Man.
that hurts me. That hurts me.
Her looking at her old uniform and then like taking off the badge.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
oh,
gotta
I
hurt.
love it. She seems very she's weary and she's just exhausted by like everything that happens, and I'm like, oh God, I love you so
Yes.
much.
Yes. I. All right. We could go on and on about this, but
Yeah, we
let's go.
stand. We
We
do stand Lin
stand
Beifong.
Lin Beifong. Favorite storylines and arcs. So we've kind of already gone into this, but um, just like specific arcs. Then, what were some of your favorite?
I really do like the metal bending city arc, which I guess
Yes, I have
comprises
that
a lot of
too.
things.
I have that too.
It's just it's so cool to see all that and
Mhm.
like see it being infiltrated by our iconic villain gang.
Mhm.
Um, just everything about season three. I as season three as a whole is just so good to me.
Mhm.
Um, just interesting, especially like when they do capture Korra and like nearly kill her at the end. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh man, oh man, oh man. Um, it's so cool. What about you?
Oh, yeah, so you took the metal bending city arc because you have that drama again with Lin Beifong and her rebellious sister. Um, the infiltration group. Uh, Lin Beifong's younger sister. I'm so sorry, I cannot remember her
No,
name.
that's okay. Me neither.
All her kids,
Look it up.
all her kids, they all have like unique personalities. We have Opal that gets with Bolin, which kind of does help bring back Bolin's sort of sweeter side, but not really by the end of it. And then she has the edgy son that makes those like metal sculptures. He like metal
Yeah.
bend sculptures. Love that. Um, Again, season one, deep place in my heart. I've mentioned last episode where I started off the whole like world with watching season one, and there's something about season one that brings back a nostalgia of being a kid and waiting every week for each episode that now I could just watch each episode instantly.
Mhm.
Um, I
Her name is Suyin, by the way.
Suyin. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, Suyin. Um, but there's so girl after watching season one, um, whenever I had something like romantic happen with me, whether or not like my heart was broken or I was falling in love, I would watch episode 5 of season 1, which is where Korra and Mako um have a like a moment where it's the love episode where Bolin takes Korra out on a date, but then Korra likes Mako, and Korra just
Yeah.
thinks like Bolin is a bro and this was on a date. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so like iconic to me, and it's like my favorite episode of all time because I don't know why. Whenever I experienced a breakup or I or the complete opposite, I was falling in love, I would watch that episode and have it would support both feelings at the same time.
Yeah,
Um,
there's so much that happens in that episode. Because you have Korra admitting to Mako and being rejected,
mhm.
Bolin asking out Korra, them going on the date, and then Mako confronting Korra and being like, "Don't break my little brother's heart," and her being like, "You're jealous," and him being like, "You're infuriating," and then they kiss, and Bolin sees, and his heart is broken, and oh, it's so much. And then they all make up at the end of the episode, and I'm
Yes.
like, yes, yes.
Yes. It's one of those comfort things whenever I want to feel better. So that's like my favorite episode from season 1. Besides episode 2, where she gets introduced to bending and she learns how to do the leaf in the wind maneuver.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's such a really just powerful moment when
Yeah,
she first is like she's on that pro bending stage and she's in zone 3 and she's about to be knocked off and it just clicks and
yeah.
she's just like avoiding every blow and I'm like, "Oh
And
my
the
God."
animation, it's like deliberate. It isn't some like, knockoff kung fu whatever. It's like
Yeah,
she's a leaf in the wind, like
she's
the
a
movie.
leaf.
Yes, be the leaf.
Be the leaf.
I oh my god. So season 1, mwah, perfection.
Yeah,
Um so closing off here, let's go into favorite lines. Did you have any favorite lines from Legend of
I
Korra?
do. I
Yes.
prepared this time.
Okay.
Um, this one is at the end of season 1 when she is on the cliffside. She has lost her bending. She's able to airbend, but nothing else. And she's crying. She's
Mhm.
just like she's sobbing. And someone comes up behind her in robes, and she's like, "I want to be alone, Tenzin." And it's really Aang, and it's his spirit, and he's like, "But you called me here." Um,
Oh, I
and
forgot about this.
she's like, "What?" And she goes into the Avatar state, and Aang says, one second, pulling it up. When we hit our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my
Tear my
God.
heart open.
She does like all four bending styles at once. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my
Mhm.
God. I love the idea of hitting rock bottom
Mhm.
and like oh
Realizing. Yeah.
yes, because I've hit rock bottom. I have done that.
Mhm.
Maybe more than once, and it does absolutely change you.
Mhm.
Um, and when you do hit rock bottom, like it is kind of a liberating feeling because you can't go down anymore. You can literally only go up, which is a very cool feeling.
Yeah, you
Um,
have to find something like new or maybe something already existent to like
yeah,
inspire you to, become a better person or to help yourself. Th-
definitely.
I can't believe I forgot about that quote. That is a
It's
really good
just
quote.
so beautiful.
It is really beautiful. And again, as season 1 was supposed to be the only like existence of the core universe, that was like, an epic finale moment.
Absolutely.
So, um beautiful. I actually, with my favorite quote, I mentioned it last episode, but didn't realize that it came from Legend of Korra.
Oh
Um,
no!
I know, it's where, oh my gosh, again, a part that absolutely rips my heart out is when the realization that Uncle Iroh is dead, one, and then
Yeah.
two, Korra finds him in the spirit world. and and he gives her advice. And so the quote that I said last episode that is actually from Legend of Korra is sometimes the best way to solve your problems is to help someone else. And I didn't realize last episode is this is him telling Korra this while thinking back about Zuko.
Oh my God. Oh,
Which makes this quote even better. I
my
I feel like he
heart,
did say this. I feel like he may have said this a second time. I feel like he maybe have said this to Toph in the original series. What
right?
not? Whatever. It's still a fucking good quote. So sometimes the best way to solve your problems is to help someone else. There you go.
I love it. Love it.
Well, this was a super fun discussion. Again, we went a little bit over. Talking about the Avatar universe can, we could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. Um, but what did you want to do next week?
I don't know. I feel like we've gotten off the rhythm of doing like thing that I know about, thing that you know about, thing that we both know about. So I
Yeah.
think we should just pick something.
Pick something. Let me
Uh,
look back in our list here.
we could do Graceling, which is the Christian Cashore series that I
Sure.
am bonkers obsessed with.
Sure.
Yes.
You could talk your head off about it at me,
Yes.
and we'll go back into that rhythm. Um,
Sweet.
Sounds good. Well, everyone,
That's
thank
good.
you for watching week 6. Which, by the way, we're reopening May 4th, which is really terrifying. But, um,
Yeah.
anyways,
I'm staying quarantined.
yeah, definitely scary. But everyone stay safe otherwise, and have a good week.
Have a good week.